So this was Charlie's Junkyard, and these woods were totally full of old cars. They pulled out a lot for the sale. A few of them are still in here. I definitely drove too far, but I had to examine it and see the mystery of what's here. Today's adventure has us up in Jacksonville, Missouri. This was about a 6-hour drive for me, so I was up at 2 a.m. to get here. The junkyard is back in the woods and the trees, and they pulled a lot of the stuff out. Trucks, tractors, cars, motorcycles. Now, I wouldn't usually drive this far for a sale, but there's not that many old junkyards that sell out and get auctioned, so it's a pretty unique opportunity. Just come check it out and see what's here. This far from home, I really have no idea what to expect, who will be here, and what the day will be like. So we're gonna spend the day here and find out. So any of you guys that are in the salvage business, doesn't take a whole lot of tools to take one apart. So there's just basic hand tools and things. Need a little more specialized tools if you're putting them back together. But for what we do, they only go one way. See the remnants of a man's livelihood all spread out to be sold to the bidders. You guys commented on one of my last videos that this will be me one day, and that definitely landed. I have a sense of awareness that every one of these we go film for you guys is one closer to my own. But as long as I go, still show you guys what we find and have fun doing it. There's a mobile oil lubester. Bare remains of the decal on it. Neat little cubby. Always a shame when those get grease in them, because you can never get it back out. My dad always said stuff like this kind of kill the resale value once it was oily. Got an Alice. What's that? No, just me.
Just you?
Yeah, I tried to talk him into it, but he said if things get a little crazy, I can call him and he'll come up. Okay. So we'll see what happens. 350 miles is a long way though. Got a little Massey, Alice. My guess is everything out here is just going to be strictly parts. They've all sat so long. These Honda 4-wheelers and 3-wheelers, my motorcycle guy's kind of into. If we had Joe's truck here, we could throw that thing in the bed. The Lodestar. Not much value in those, but a lot of metal for scrap. Go down the rows here. They advertised about 100 vehicles. You can see out here there's a 1/4 mile of cars and trucks. This is a 3/4 ton with the split rims. Find one of these with 17.5s or 19.5s, it adds quite a lot of interest. That one's probably not a bidder for me. Caravan. The Vinyl Top Celebrity. Look at this thing. It's a later year with the composite headlights. Fuel injected. The early ones of these that were carbureted. After time, those carburetors would give trouble. But this could be an aftermarket top. That aluminum trim just came on a stick and you'd cut it off, and that vinyl came on a roll, you'd cut it off. Dress up your car. It's got a trunk spoiler. Trunk rack, I guess. GM brought out the X cars in 1980, and that was their first venture into front-wheel drive. They were a disappointment to a lot of people. Really dismal cars. So these A bodies in 1982, they really put a lot into making them better. After the whole diesel thing, that drove customers away, and I think they had a keen sense of self-awareness that if they made a second dud of a front-wheel drive car, that would pretty well doom their future. It was a C60, big old workhorse. That thing is all worn down and beat up and rusty, but that grill looks like brand new. Little Toyota, presumably. Parted all the way down. Mercury Villager. These were a very, very popular trade-in for the Cash for Clunkers back in '09. A lot of them went away. This one wrecked and parked before that. Little mini case skid steer, 1830. Some pretty early technology in that one. Little home-built gooseneck. Every home-built trailer I've ever had, they're always inferior to factory built. You just can't out-engineer a dedicated company that's building them. There's a Skylark with the vinyl top. That one's probably aftermarket, maybe like ASC. It's got all the molded fiberglass. Trunk rack also. This was same body as the Grand Am and the Achieva. And the Grand Am was a great looking car. And the Buick and the Achieva just had kind of a dowdy appearance. That vinyl top on there gives it a really similar visual tie-in to the Roadmasters of the 90s. Farm country here. A lot of it's the same as what we have in Kansas, and a lot's different. 97 Grand Marquis, used up derby car with a stuffed pipe bumper in the front. Portable feeder. This GMC 57 would be my guess. This a V8? Nope, it's a 6. V8s in these were part of the Pontiac family. So if you go to a Pontiac show or a club meet, they actually allow early GMCs in. So that's kind of a neat footnote of General Motors history. Little Dodge Rampage. That's a stick even. Wow, 5-speed. Look at that. This is in surprisingly nice shape for Missouri. brief period of time they built these, and those Volkswagen Caddies were a competitor to them. Neat car, but even straight and rust-free as this one is, you'd have to put a lot of work in getting that back on the road. It's probably been parked 25 or 30 years. Pretty unique though that that thing sat in a junkyard and never had any parts taken off of it. Big mower. So all this stuff was stuck back in the trees. This is comparatively flat for Missouri. I mean, you can see there's rolling hills, but it's not like so steep like that last week's Nebraska sale. And the one big deciding factor for me coming here was that they had it all pulled out and easy accessible to load. That makes a huge difference. Here's another one of these little 3-row corn headers. See some continuity with the Nebraska sale. And some tiny little headers on it. Some guardrail. Guys that have feed bunks for cattle, they like that used guardrail because the cow can't really tear it up. What's that thing? Little hay chopper. This is cool. Old aluminum boat. More continuity with the Nebraska sale. This is a Larson. Yep. Larson Watercraft, Little Falls, Minnesota. May or may not still float. The important part's there. You put some new wood back on it and fix that thing up. Here's a 455 Bonneville convertible. This is identical to one that we have. A 70 455. It's a very desirable engine. I would guarantee that thing's locked. With a 2-barrel carb. It's kind of a question mark. I think a 455 would be a 4-barrel. It's hard to say. I may get time to clean up the pad on that and see what it actually codes out as. The rest of the body parts you can do a little bit with, but the engine's really the main draw. Drum brake car. Factory AC. Every junkyard's got an old school bus for storage. Another Skylark. Parked in 06. Just an underwhelming car compared to a Grand Am. This is a half-ton Ford. They've swapped a 3/4 ton rear end into. It's pretty parted out. I can never commit these grills to memory. 63 or 4, I think. And we've got the dual pontoon boat. A big aluminum boat like that's a little easier to get rid of if it's not any good, because the aluminum will scrap out. This one's acquired cedar. Look at that. Insert tree joke here. There's a Grand Prix. These actually make good derby cars. These W bodies. This one's actually not terribly rotted either. Mousy. Ooh, we need the smell-o-vision for this. Yep. You got the little combination lock for the glove box store. Kind of neat. The old Ford conversion van. Fond nostalgia whenever I see one of these. We grew up in a Dodge about this color. These are actually having a lot of collector value come up on them if they're preserved nice, which this one's not. Obviously parts mousy. That is the Mouse Motel. See, this is power windows and locks. A lot of these conversion vans were optioned out. You got the little gnat graveyard with the ants feasting on them. They lay out in the woods long enough and those things happen. Little Cavalier RS convertible. This is a fuel injected car, so it'd be 86 maybe. I've actually got a two-door hatchback that I saved from the crusher. I was out pulling parts and I was driving out of the yard and that thing came in and I wasn't going to turn around, and then I was like, I got to turn around. And so I saved it. Old GMC 60 to 63. Strictly parts. Cab rust is pretty serious. That's too bad the rust streaked down and obscured the door lettering. Kind of a neat camper on this Chevy. Again, if they're in good shape. There's collector interest starting for them. The rest of the truck's pretty boned down. Thomas Forrest. That truck is used up. I got the Lodestar with the feed mixer body. Not much collector interest. Another W body Lumina. Quarter mile pulled out of the woods, and they're all selling today. They said there was 100 cars here, and they listed a lot of 70s and 60s Chevrolets, but I am not seeing any yet. There's a second row up front here, and then on the very other side of the property there's a whole row, and those were pictured in that other row. These over here, there are no pictures, so I had no idea what I was driving 350 miles for. Probably too far to come, but we will see what happens. Here's what's across the road. Now these ones were pictured online. This is more of like reconnaissance for me, just to make sure there's nothing over there that I really have to have, which I don't exactly see any. I'm going to take my chance on these first rows for one trailer load. The goal is not to have to come back here again. John Deere 510 baler. So you guys will remember, this is the auction service that does the consignment every July up in Macon, Missouri. And I filmed last year, did not make it this year. You can see they've repurposed an old ambulance for their cashier's truck. Really good people. I do recommend them. There's a factory built gooseneck. Parted out green Chevy, 3/4 ton. I really like this color. And they used it on a lot of the GM line, A bodies, B bodies. Just a neat shade of green. There, it's got the matching. It's like the color cards. Flip through them at the paint store. 68 satellite. Identified by the little round marker lights. 69 had square side markers. And Mopar, mostly old parts and rust. And that's what this one is. There's a lot reproed for these, and then there's a lot that's not. So any old parts car, you can really pick on them and recover some good usable things. You see that floor is just shot. The cars, when they sit down on the ground like this, that's because those torsion bars literally rip through the rusted mounts and then they just drop. Seat's kind of amusing. Big old chunk of foam. You imagine probably some 110-pound, 4'9" little old lady driving this around. Seat cushion like that's a little more permanent than the telephone book, I suppose. Parked in 98. That thing was on the road 30 years. 3 decades of road salt. Slant sixer. That's pretty neat. Built Chevy van, 78 or 9. Chevy van is a short, but it's a parts van. So being a short van doesn't make a huge amount of difference when they're just for parts. It's most of the stuff you'd need would interchange off of a long van. There's just tons of square feet of shag carpet in this thing. It is totally shagged out. It is a tilt column, that's worth a little. Aftermarket sunroof. And look at this. I wonder if that carpet somehow held moisture and rusted. We're in the state of misery. Blank cargo side door is fairly valuable, but unfortunately this one's rusty and dented. My old Blue Parts van has a cutout in that door, and I'm just gonna take a sheet of like aluminum or something, lay that over it, and have somebody airbrush a mural in it or something, carpet the inside, and you'd never know there's been a hole butchered in my sliding door. '68 Mercury. That's pretty neat colors on there. White with a teal painted top. Four-door sedan. Of course, your four-door hardtop was the Hawaii 5.0 car. This one's got factory disc brakes. Those used to be pretty valuable for us. Sell online, but now you can buy a lot of parts kits that's all new stuff and put them on your existing factory spindles, and it's a lot less work than having to swap over used parts and clean them up. This was a big block car. See that 390 bell on the transmission. Power steering, power brakes, no AC. You get this far north, you see some that are not equipped with AC. This Caprice is neat. Just totally rotted. No roof rack from the factory. If a guy had side trim in decent shape, I'd think he could sell it fairly easily. Butternut yellow is kind of a neat color on here. You've got Ford C6. Of course, the Caprice had the wood grain dash trim. This one's a power window car. I see this and I still have real regrets about not buying the one at the Vanderbrink sale in Fort Collins 2 years ago. That was a rare car, 283 that would have run with overdrive. It would have really cleaned up. $4 grand would have bought it, and the guy probably could have cleaned it up and got it running and sold it for 10. The big question for me, do we have a tilt column? And the answer is no. So there's stablemate, 1 year newer. You can see quite a difference. They used the aluminum side moldings, which I'm sure that versus fiberglass with stainless inserts was tremendously cheaper to tool for and to produce at the factory. This car's just shot. I would guarantee that frame's bad. Unfortunately, these just got so banged up when they put them in the yard. A lot of parts. Engine in the back. I'm sure they put in there when the tailgate still worked before it rusted shut. No engine in the front. And they made it very clear there's no equipment here to load with. So that makes getting something like this on the trailer a big challenge. So much weight in the back and the springs collapsed. You just drag that thing till you burned your winch. So it's the one car I kind of like to had, but I'm not so sure. Corner lights in it. This one, also a straight column. You'd hope with a Caprice, you might get a tilt, but not in this case. No bumper guards. Of course, those corner lights were standard on the Caprice. So this thing's really just pretty much a no option car. 60 Biscayne was pictured on the sale flyer, and then they pulled it out, and I guess one of the family said that it was theirs and wasn't going to be auctioned. So, not that a 60 holds tremendous appeal to me, although this one's one of the more complete cars out here. All the trim and bumpers and body panels, even the dash unpillaged. See in there, radio delete, that's kind of neat. Clock delete, gray interior. It's got kind of a neat fleet vibe to it. 67, they had two color choices of the maroon. It's hard to tell with this one being weathered and mossy, but I'm fairly sure this is Madeira maroon, which still have a long way to go to fix it. That door's pretty munched. Quarters are rusted away. And then down here, the frame looks good, but on the bottom there's a whole area that's, I mean, if you were fixing the car, I'm sure you could weld it up and grind it down and make it good again. This is probably the one I would have had the most interest in. Not a tilt column, hard to see in there. So this one, same deal as the 67 wagon, really just a no option car. As far as a builder, it actually is comparatively good car. This old Chevy pickup, just pretty used up. This is a 4-speed manual, 4-wheel drive, half ton. And this one, I believe, is a 58 F350. Might have been an F250, but they added the wheels. 223 inline 6. Plugs are fairly recent in that, meaning in the last 30 years. That engine's seized. That's too bad that thing wouldn't rock and run. I'd probably go after this thing. Got the neat signage. Somebody else's signage. So this thing's been around the country up here in Missouri. And its last ownership was here in the Junkyard as the wrecker. A lot of parts in there that people probably asked for and they pulled and they never came and bought, and they never got unloaded. Presumably would have had a wrecker sling that they probably put into another truck after this one was worn out and parked. Custom cab. This is a super neat truck. So this is the very first one that sells. See, they put maybe a G-body bumper on the front. Realized I probably should search the step van a little. In a junkyard, these get used for storage. It looks like not too much in here that's of any value or interest. Yeah, for what's here, I definitely drove too far, but I had to examine it and see the mystery of what's here. And here's the old camper. It's kind of neat with the gold anodizing. This is a Yellowstone Capri. Wow. It's like 1969 in here. It'd be a pretty neat camper in good shape, but like this, it's not anything to revive. Here's the wildlife corner. We've got a little frog hiding out. Camouflage to the metallic brown and rust of the old Chevy pickup. So we're back across the road, and I gotta take a look and see if any of these are worth putting on the trailer. They said there were more in the woods. There's supposed to be a 60 Chevy Parkwood wagon that was buried enough that they didn't dig it out. So here's the Carmen Ghia. If the bumpers are good on those, they'll actually sell. A stainless reproduction is available, but they're really pricey. I think like $1,500. I don't know the market on parts for these at all, so I couldn't say if there's anything worth taking out of here or not. My guess would be no. Truck bed parts. This is a 52 Chevrolet. Just not a whole lot there. It is a true coupe with the short quarter windows and the long rear deck. It is optioned with the power glide. Unfortunately, that trunk lid's kind of peeled up. If you really needed one, it'd probably be fixable. Doors are shot. Other than the power glide, there's really no accessory pieces on that one. Got the little Vega hatchback. Hatch got folded up and amazingly didn't break the back glass. Taken apart, probably because the engine's shot. I'm sure a bunch of you guys have stories about Vegas with shot engines. I've never owned a Vega. This is 68 or so. Old Chevy pickup. Pretty parted out. But you always gotta look in them as well as on them. I don't see anything in it either. There's a F-250 56. Parts. Parked in 74. The old Y block. Ooh, it stinks. Stinks like critters. It's rough. Now, these F-250s had their own larger tailgates, so if a guy ever gets one of those, they're actually fairly saleable because they've never been repro'd. Probably never will be. Little Aspen or Volare wagon. Wow, that thing is just pounded. That's like not even a parts car, it's like more of an artifact. Could have left that in the woods and future archaeologists could have studied our culture. But it'll get sold for scrap. This is the 990 Rambler. Not too much to it either. Wow. Kind of a neat car. They're just not really worth hardly anything for collector value. So there's not probably too much a guy would sell off of them in parts, but there's nothing repro'd either. So if a person wanted parts, used is the only option. This is a factory air car. None of these open. That's the problem. When they put them here, they opened and they loaded them with junk. No way you'd get these back open. That is a major issue for hauling these for me. Have an engine back in there, make them really tail heavy. So regrettably, this one probably. You see the parallels for last week's Nebraska Farmstead auction? Another 69, that one being a Caprice that I left where it sat. And this one probably logically the same. Of course, a Townsman was the Bel Air series. It is kind of a neat car, really bare bones. This is Dodge Demon 340 car. Wow. Now, that's a fairly uncommon vehicle. But it's just so gone. I mean, they all are. Automatic car. Everything just hammered. Grill's broke. The hood's flat. Little pinholes popping everywhere in that hood. Pinholes all the way around, all across the fenders. Just very little usable on that car, if he could even get it loaded. Although the cool part of this, that was plumb crazy. That's kind of neat. 67 Galaxy. Joe would have casual interest in, but I'm really not sure I'd be able to get that thing loaded. And it is big block car. Look at the rust. Guaranteed seized or your money back. Last car to sell. I guess I'll see if I can bid and drag it on. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Lots of wheels. Pretty much GM stuff. There's a 50 Studebaker R Series, 67 cab, 58, old Type 3 station wagon, C20, about to break in half, old Rambler 770. Just not much here. This whole woods used to be totally full of cars. They drug them all out to sell at the auction.
If it is northeast of this trail, north of our north, that's what we're selling.
Oh wow.
Everybody get to look? All right, it's got an orange mark on it. It's going to sell. The newest car, if anybody wants it, it's not included in it. It does not sell.
Too bad that's bent.
Right here on the screen, right here, you're going to put 20 miles a day. 25. Danny, please take your flag and kind of go towards those trees so they understand where the directions is. Yep. Tractor tires, anything with orange, the trailer house, the farm machinery pieces up in here, we're not bringing our truck down. Anything with orange paint, behind the truck, northwest. We'll go to those buses in a minute.
Over in this old van body, there are a couple vintage motorcycles. And by a couple vintage motorcycles, I mean 3. There's a big 4-cylinder, Honda of some sort. Probably a CB something. That case is all cracked apart. Down here we've got a Suzuki minus a side cover and a back wheel. We've got a Honda. What year is this thing? Honda is 7 of 73. Some of these Japanese cars and bikes have like weird splits for the model years. So it'd be a 73 or 74. Cylinder jug missing. Suzuki. Now I honestly don't know which of these is actually the better bike or more collectible, so I'm gonna get on the phone with my motorcycle guy. This auction offered so many choices of four-wheeled things to put on the trailer, so tune in next week and I'll show you what I bought.